It seems like everyone you know and everyone you don't know is getting into running at the moment. Its popularity has gone through the roof, and there's a good reason for it. Running is class. But chances are, if you're watching this video, you've signed up to your first half marathon, or you might even be going into your second or third half marathon and you want to get faster. So in this video, I'm gonna give you my top tips on how to improve your half marathon time so that you can get that well-earned PB. I know this video is about the half marathon, but I do have a free 5K development plan in the description below. Some of the intervals and the longer runs and the terminology would really help you with your half marathon training. So download it, it's completely free, and let me know how you get on. A lot of videos on YouTube will probably start talking about expectations now, about pressure, about all of this stuff. But the first thing I'm gonna talk about is your training needs to be absolutely nailed. It's obviously very hard to talk you through an individualized training program for you through a screen when I know categorically nothing about you. It would also be pretty bad practice. But there are some basic principles that I can teach you or remind you of so that you can carry them into your training block so that you know what you're doing, why you're doing them, and how they're gonna benefit you when you get to that half marathon. One thing that you probably need to be thinking about when you're going into your half marathon training is your heart rate zones. I'm gonna pop them on the screen here. And why it's important that we know these, it's so that when you're programming your running, you can dictate the effort level within each run. A general rule of thumb, and I've spoken about this in previous videos, is that you stick to an 80-20 rule. 80% of your work should be easy, 20% of your runs should be harder, where your heart rate or the intensity of your runs goes up. Why that's important is because most people, unless you're an outlier, unless you're a quite advanced runner, won't be able to handle those forces on your body, and more than likely you'll end up injured and missing on the half marathon. So in terms of your heart rate zones, there is 5 different zones. Zone 1 is easy/recovery. This is around 50 to 60% of your max heart rate. The effort level would be described as very easy, very light breathing, and it's not causing too much stress on your body. This can be used if you're quite an advanced runner to promote your recovery by increasing blood flow and supports your aerobic base because it's very low stress, but it is exercise. Zone 2 is something that you would have heard people talk about, and this is where you're working at around 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. This is what we would describe as a comfortable, steady pace. You'd be able to hold a conversation, but not going so fast that that conversation is broken. The benefits of zone 2 is that it builds your aerobic base, your aerobic efficiency, improves fat metabolization, and it is the fundamental base for your endurance training. Next, we have zone 3, commonly known as tempo, and this is where you're working around 70% or 80% of your max heart rate. In terms of effort, it would be moderately hard. It would take a lot more effort for you to be able to hold these paces, and it would be harder for you to hold a full coherent conversation. Within tempo, you're improving your aerobic capacity, which raises your lactate threshold and is the period between easy running and very hard running. Next, we have zone 4, which is called threshold work, and this is around 80 to 90% of your max heart rate. Within threshold, it is a pretty hard effort, but it is controlled. It's not uncontrolled. You're not just flying out the blocks. You're not working as hard as you can. You are controlled. You could sustain it for a decent amount of time. And within this, the benefits you get physiologically are it improves your lactate threshold. And sometimes, if you're not new to running, this can be your sustainable race pace. And lastly, we have zone 5, where we'll be thinking about VO2 max or max effort. This is where you're running 90% to 100% of your max heart rate. And obviously, this is going to be very hard for your body to do. Your breathing is going to be all over the place, and it is a little bit less controlled because of the intensity of the work. The benefits we get from this is it boosts our speed, it boosts our power, and it improves our maximal oxygen uptake. So that's what heart rates are, and that's how you're going to apply them to your training. Remember, most of your work needs to be 80% easy, 20% can be tempo, threshold, or above. We're still talking about training, but I'm going to talk you through an example training week now. Of course, I know nothing about you, so it's going to be very hard to prescribe a perfect training program, but there are some basic principles that we can follow, and I'm going to show you how you can apply the 80-20 rule in terms of intensity to a training week. This training week is going to be for 35 kilometers across the week. The training week is going to start on a Monday, and on the Monday, you're going to do some form of interval work. This is going to be an interval where you're moving into tempo, threshold, and maybe even to VO2 max zones. So zones 3, 4, and 5. This can be done on a track, this can be done on a treadmill, and some common intervals are 1K repeats, 2K repeats, 800-meter repeats with 60 to 90 seconds rest in between those efforts. The goal of these sessions are to teach you to be able to run faster, to be able to get the benefits from those higher zones, such as improved VO2 max, improved lactate threshold, and just overall power and speed, so that when you come to your race day, you know you can hit faster speeds and you have a tolerance of what it feels like to run there. On Tuesday, you're gonna have a rest day, because as I'm gonna speak about later, rest is so important. On Wednesday, you're just gonna do an easy zone 2 5K. On Thursday, again, you're gonna do an easy 10K. We've put 2 running days together because both of those days are easy. If you're absolutely knackered from the training day before, you've run too hard in your easy run, you should be able to run consecutive days. Friday is going to be a rest day. Then on Saturday or Sunday, you're going to do your longer run. For the sake of this example, this longer run is going to be 15K. For the most part, it would be a chilled, easy pace, and you could put some strides in if you wanted to. This training week of 35K perfectly holds the 80-20 rule in terms of running intensity. So you can use that as an example and apply it to your own training. And this brings us on nicely to point number 2. Now you've got your training somewhat sorted. If you have any questions, you can pop it in the comments. Just book that race. And when I say book that race, book the race and think about the consequences later. Of course, you need to think about booking the correct race for you. If you're someone who doesn't like huge crowds, huge levels of support, I'm sure you could find a nice local race that is going to suit your needs. But if you want the buzz, if you want the accountability, if you actually want a little bit of pressure on your shoulders that's going to bring out the best in you, book a big race, 20, 30,000 people around you, all working towards the same thing. There is no feeling like it. Knowing you've stood on that start line, or the pressure that you know that you're going to be stood on the start line at some point, is enough for you to train when it's dark, train when it's raining, do the gym sessions when you don't want to. It's exactly what most people need to hold them accountable. And it's not all doom and gloom. We're not doing this to bully ourselves into doing the run, but you also get a huge sense of reward at the end of running. And it doesn't always have to be that you've hit that personal best. For example, take myself. Recently, I trained relentlessly for Rome Half Marathon, trying to break the 1 hour 30 time barrier. I built myself up to running 70K weeks, 3 weeks in a row, which is my highest volume ever. And when it got to race day, I absolutely mucked it up. Did I hate that race? No. Did I regret booking that race? Categorically not. It was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had. I cannot recommend international races better. There's nothing more satisfying than running a race and enjoying the city afterwards. Coming from my background, you know I'm not gonna let you watch a running video without talking about strength training. Strength training is the fundamental building blocks of what's gonna hold you together as you try and become a better runner. Yes, you might not be able to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger by the end of your marathon or your half marathon training block, but the work that you do in the gym is 100% going to benefit you when you go for that faster half marathon time. Do not be fooled or fall for the mistakes that you should only be doing light reps to support your running. Instead, there's probably more of an argument that you need to be doing lower rep work to keep your strength, keep your ligaments and tendons strong, and of course, keep your bones capable of handling the pounding that they're gonna go under. As well as low reps, you can go into medium to high reps if you wanted to, but you would probably wanna be thinking about focusing on your lower body, and you wanna be picking unilateral movement. I'm gonna pop some on the screen up here so that you can see them. The easy ones to talk about are lunges, such as walking lunges, Bulgarian split squats, lateral lunges, and you can't neglect your core. Of course, you want to be looking about your lower leg, so your calf and the front of your shin. You could always be thinking about single leg calf raises, which you can do pretty much anywhere, and tibialis raises, which are a great exercise to train the muscle on the front of your shin and stopping you getting shin splints. And of course, you can't look past core work. If you have a poor core or abdominal area, you're really going to struggle in terms of tolerance when you run that half marathon. It's 21.1 kilometers on your feet, working at quite a high heart rate. If your core and your body's not up to it, other muscles will take over from your core and you'll fatigue or get injured, and worse, you might not even finish. So strength training is a must. Within any half marathon training block, because of the stress that it puts on your body, you have to be talking about recovery. And I do not mean ice baths. I do not mean compression socks or compression boots. I do not mean the latest supplement. I mean the pillars of good recovery: nutrition, sleep, stress management, and the volume in which you are running in your program. All of these intertwine with each other to make sure you are able to actually get the benefits from your training, or you trickle over into working too hard, overtraining, and find yourself injured, burnt out, or worse. I don't mean dead. In terms of sleep, it's easy. You need to be thinking about minimum 7 hours. The recommendations in the literature are 8 hours of good quality sleep. In terms of your stress management, it's very hard in the modern world, but don't add more stress to your life. If you've got a stressful job, you need to find ways to unwind from that. And yes, most of the time this would be exercise, but try and find other ways so that you're not just compounding stress on top of each other. If your stress is high, you're probably not going to be sleeping that well. Your cortisol is going to be high, so your body's not going to be functioning as well as it could do. And again, burnout, injury, and just general motivation levels will suffer. In terms of nutrition, for a half marathon training block, I would have thought that you would just try and stick at calorie maintenance, hitting a good amount of protein, and fueling yourself with carbohydrate, making sure you're eating pre and post running, and I would say at least 3 meals per day with a good amount of protein. And lastly, you need to think about your volume, and this is the one that probably relates to training quite a lot. Volume needs to be specific to you, and I mean training volume, I mean gym volume. They are intrinsically linked. If you're only running 10K, you can't jump straight away up to doing 50, 60Ks per week. You need to build your volume up over time. And lastly, one of the things that makes or breaks your ability to perform and get that half marathon personal best on race day is your race day strategy. 4 days before, I would start eating higher carbohydrates than you usually would. There's calculators online, but I normally look between 7 to 10 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram. 4 days out for around 2 days, and then I would start to taper it down so that you don't run into any digestive stress. In terms of fueling on the day, I'd wake up 2 hours before the race minimum, and I'd get a big meal into me. Something that's high in carbohydrate, but it isn't gonna sit super heavy in your stomach. Think bagels with honey and jam, sourdough, fruit, all of that good stuff. Get something easily digestible into your system so that you can get your carbohydrate levels up, but you're not going to cause yourself loads of digestive. In terms of hydration, as soon as you woke up in the morning, I would definitely down around a litre of water with electrolytes. The goal on race day is to get hydrated and then keep yourself topped up. You don't want to be having to go to the toilet throughout the race, so that's why I recommend slowly tapering down your water once you've got hydrated, because race day toilets are chaos. And lastly, we need to be thinking about your gel. Gels are something that have got a bad reputation, but they are very good for delivering you carbohydrate. I'd recommend having a carbohydrate gel every 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how hard you're working and depending how hard and what you've trained with to tolerate in terms of carbohydrate gel. Gels have a bad rep because they do sometimes give you some digestive stress, so you need to test your gels before you use them on race day. The gels that I like to use are cis beta fuels. They give you a good or the perfect mix of glucose and fructose, which means that your body can absorb more carbohydrates per hour. Personally, I'm trying to get 2 gels in per hour. So for me, that's around 80 grams of carbohydrates. Of course, leading up to my half marathons, I will train to be able to tolerate this, and you should too. On race day, you want to make sure there's a constant flow of carbohydrates going into your body so that when you're working hard, you don't feel that drop of energy around the 10 to 20K mark. That is how you're going to personal best in your next half marathon. Follow those tips and I guarantee it will happen. If you've got this far, follow me on Instagram. I give away daily tips, tons of information, and you can check all of my other videos out if you want to really binge on the stuff that I talk about. Again, I'll signpost you to my bio. There is a free 5K development program in there. Yes, it is the 5K, but it will give you tons of good information that you can apply to your half marathon training block on how to structure your training. Good luck with your next race. If you haven't booked it, book it, and let me know what races you're doing in the comments below.